the evening off. So first of all, again, to introduce myself, my name is AE. I'm one of the owners of the Argo. We are thrilled to have participants and the sort of extended family of the QWF writing workshop that was focusing on the disability experience and that was hosted by Seeley Quest, who is here with us also. Before we get started, I want to mention a few things. First of all, tonight's event, like all of our events, is captioned. These are automatic captions, so they won't be perfect. I apologize, we just do not have a budget to hire a captioner, but they're not too bad. If you think that's something you would benefit from, the way to turn them on is to click on the 3 dots at the bottom of your screen where it says more. You click on that, you will see an option that says show subtitle. And that will put the subtitle directly onto the Zoom window. And if you go into subtitle settings, you can make those bigger, or I think there's a couple different things you can do there. If there's any questions or questions about any other accessibility issue, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat, or just you can message me directly in the chat, or you can put them in the chat as needed. There's a few other things we're going to do to try to make the evening as accessible as possible. Among them, I'd like everyone to keep their microphones muted unless they are actively reading, because that avoids noise and other kind of disruptions. Also, this is a longish event. It'll probably be like, hour and a half, 2 hours. Around 8 or so, I will definitely, but probably around 8, probably the halfway mark, take a short break, just like 5-8 minutes, whatever, just so that people can get some more water, close their eyes for a bit, walk around, whatever. Like, a break is just nice. There's going to be other things that Seeley is going to mention later, but those are some of the big ones. Oh, I also do want to mention that this event is being recorded. Now, this is very unusual for us. The Argo usually never records events for privacy concerns and so on. But in this case, because there were people who were unable to make it to the event directly, we thought that it would be more inclusive and more accessible if the event be made available in the future. So if this is not something you're comfortable with, obviously you can keep your camera off. If you have some real concerns, you can bring those up with me, but the event will be recorded and it will be made available on the YouTube channel of the Quebec Writers Federation. So the QWF, who is co-hosting this event with us, they will be taking care of, editing the video into, the length it needs to be, and they will have that up on their YouTube channel at some point in the not too distant future. That is the only use that is being made of that video. I'm gonna let one more person in who has just showed up. Okay, I think that's it for the kind of housekeeping stuff. Before we get started officially, I also want to mention that the Argo Bookshop is located on the unceded lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka people, part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The area has long been and continues to be a gathering place for many First Peoples, including the Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, and Anishinaabe. The Argo Bookshop enthusiastically stocks a large selection of books by Indigenous authors. We invite you to come take a look if you haven't already. We have everything from fiction, nonfiction, poetry, amazing stuff, science fiction, you name it. And we also do what we can to directly support Indigenous organizations in our neighborhood. As you might be joining from all kinds of places, since this is a virtual event, we invite you to examine your relationship to the land that you occupy and to support Indigenous groups that are active in your area. So if you don't know the Argo Bookshop, We are Montreal's oldest independent English language bookstore. We've been around since 1966. My friend Moti and I bought the place about 4 and a bit years ago. And we've been trying to keep up its, with its history of being a community space and of having these events. It was always super important for us. I used to go to the Argo when I was a CJF student and get books there. And it's amazing to continue that legacy. Obviously, when the pandemic hit, we had to pivot the way we do events, and we did that right away. Already in March 2020, we were doing events virtually. We learned how to do Zoom just like everybody else, and we started doing these events. And one of the things that I like about doing events like this is that even though we all there are definitely ways in which Zoom is less accessible. Like I get it, but it is also means that people don't have to leave their homes and leave their spaces and go out to a place, which I think permits a lot of people to join that might not otherwise be able to, both from an accessibility issue angle, but also from all kinds of other places. Like we've had guests and participants and audience members from all over the place. And I love that. So we will eventually go back to doing in-person events, but we're not going to stop doing virtual events either because they're just so great. I think I have talked enough, so I am going to pass the mic to Seeley Quest, who was the host of that QWF workshop that I mentioned and who was the driving force behind this event. So Seeley, whenever you're ready, floor is yours.
Hey there. Folks can hear me okay? Audio's, yeah, okay, great. All right, well, I want to just make note of a few more things that we're trying to practice regarding accessibility. So again, just to note, the video will be replayable in the future from QWF's YouTube channel. I'm going to request, although this is something that I have even myself enthusiastically participated in at different events, I'm going to request that people not go wild in adding chat comments while folks are actually reading their pieces. But instead to wait if you need to drop a comment into the chat box in between moments, and so we can all have as full attention as possible while they're speaking. Also, again, I think you got info about how to select adding captions if you need. Obviously, the captions are so quality, being automated. I would like to just really shout out an appreciation for the Quebec Writers Federation as well. They've supported what I'm trying to do since I was first able to host a thematic writing workshop with the organization, and they're helping to promote this event and enable the recording of it because the QWF is valuing exposure for minority writers in the province. So thank you so much for this. Also, already communicated with the featured readers, asking that folks will give trigger warnings as they are needed. And that we offer visual descriptions of ourselves. So I will give an example to start. So I'm Seeley. I'm a white androgynous trans person. I have short buzzed hair that's red, brown, and silver. I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt, and I have kind of a black and white pattern fabric behind me in the backdrop. I am gonna shortly invite our first reader to start off, and she'll introduce herself visually as well as kind of introduce herself as an author. And before that, I did just want to note for people who saw the announcements of the featured lineup, two of the confirmed writers unfortunately had to withdraw just very recently today. One, Malek Yalawi, just isn't feeling very well at all after having second vaccine dose. And the other, Dexter X, got pulled to some critical support on some other folks' behalf. And I'll say a little bit more about that later tonight. So without further ado, I am going to welcome Bára to start off our readings.
Hello. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Seeley, for organizing, and Argo for having me. My name is Bára Hladík. She, her are my pronouns. And I have bangs, brown hair, and a pink and teal collared shirt. And I'm up against a white background, leaned up against some pillows. I was born in Sinixt territory to Czech migrants, and I'm currently a guest on Esquimalt and Songhees territory. And today I'm going to share a short excerpt from a novella that I'm working on about autoimmune disease and a woman navigating autoimmune disease. And it's it's coming together, but this excerpt is a few years old. So yeah, thank you for listening. And if there's any technical sound things or anything, just let me know in the chat. And yeah, the chapter is called Speed Bump. I was just among the whales. I hang somewhere in water or mud, listening to whales move through water until the snakes weave my muscles. They swim up the center of my spine and fill my lymph with soft poison. They tie knots in my skull, lay eggs in my temples. There's nowhere for them to go, so they push and coil, push and coil. I rise carefully because I'm so full of snakes. They flex and roll and bite as I move to the shower to calm them with hot, hot water. My roommates are working at the hotel or jackhammering concrete. I am home, a balancer of spoons. I balance a spoon on my windowsill for getting out of bed, a spoon on a pile of laundry for getting dressed. I save 90 spoons for the doctor's appointment. If you balance a spoon everywhere you go and never run out, you don't pass out. I leave 30 spoons between cans of beans at the store. My roller is a ball and chain of heavy roots. Every step up the street leaves an imprint the size of France. The speed bump is a tragedy. I contemplate death. In another time, women who lived with snakes were burned. Now they are forgotten. I get tangled between my cane and my roller and leave my body near Salisbury. The season is changing. I sit by a witch hazel. The thin yellow flowers reach to me. A drop of water winks, even though there hasn't been any sun in months. I wake up on the couch and my spoons and roots are scattered on the floor. I collect the spoons and then the roots. I put them on shelves. I rest, I breathe. I cook a heap of protein between naps, face down on the kitchen table. I move my hips slow to the onions singing in hot oil and Joni's soft voice on tape. She had something like snakes, or was it bugs? I'd rather have a whale, one big, slow whale. The waiting room is in a far-off region of the hospital, an old TV on mute, a couple of people wearing fleece, some carpeted chairs, a clock. I take a seat and balance 13 spoons on the armrest. I frown at the clock because it doesn't tell the time. It tells contrasts, like you versus your birth, you versus your appointment, you versus snakes. But the planet spins around the sun in an ellipse, and time slips around like light, like when you are waiting for relief, and the only thing you can do is count the days you've been alone with your snakes. The clock was moving, we weren't. My leg was sticking straight outside my cane. The man stood up and marched to the counter. Our appointment was an hour and a half ago, he said to the secretary. She nodded and clicked around on her computer. Her blonde bangs arched above her drawn eyebrows. Sorry, sir, there's nothing we can do. I laugh. Well, I laugh without laughing, in silence, with no joy. There's nothing you can do in the white-walled chamber that schedules pain. The administrator clicks, the clock ticks. Patient, yes, I am. A mother brings a boy into the waiting room. They check in with the administrator and sit down. His legs stick straight off the chair. I picture him 83 years old. He looks wide at his mother, who hands him a kid's book from the stack next to the Cosmopolitans. A woman asks the boy what his name is. His little hands clutch and rub and pat the thin arm of the chair. He looks to his mother for directions. She raises her eyebrows. My aunt had an undiagnosed condition. They gave her antidepressants and said her thought patterns were to blame. Years later, they found she had tiny cockroaches in her thyroid. The administrator calls my name. I shuffle to the counter, lean my cane on the wall. She peers down at me with her vacant blue eyes. Follow the nurse, she says. The nurse walks 3 steps ahead of me through doors down a hallway to another waiting room. I drop too many spoons along the way. She doesn't notice. The doctor will be with you shortly, she says, and leaves. Waiting room 2.0. Every chair was filled except one. I took it. People were looking at their phones, sleeping on the floor, reading magazines, whispering. Some people looked at the wall, others looked at the floor. There was an older lady with thick glasses who kept pushing her thin hair out of her face and looking at me. I wondered if she could see my snakes. A couple in their 30s wore white collared shirts, were doing a crossword. I wasn't in the mood for watching. I wanted to be deep in warm water, listening to the sound of whales. But I'd been waiting for this appointment for 9 months. I couldn't breathe, so I read a diagram of a diaphragm. The diaphragm, it says, is the musculomembranous partition separating the thoracic and abdominal cavities. Do the doctors know how to breathe? Do their diaphragms relax, convex, but flatten as it contracts during inhalation? They fill paperwork. They glimpse 32 devastating lives in 8 hours. Do they remember to breathe? Another nurse gave me paperwork, name, address, medical history, a document of my phenotypic variations from the average human. I finished quick and sat with my completed document on my lap. I read the document 5 times. I whispered to the snakes and massaged my hip. I stood and stretched and sat down. I drew triangles above the word patient and circles above intake. People came and went. A young girl with a red shirt who had come after me was already with a doctor somewhere. Even the lady with the fanny pack had come and gone. I'd been forgotten. I wrestled snakes down my back as I went down the hall to the nearest desk. The man told me I was at the wrong desk and I should go to the check-in counter down the hall. The counter down the hall was closed. I made my way back to the original waiting room and checked in for the second time. The woman told me to take a seat. I've already been here for hours, I said. I had an appointment at 1. You're just going to have to wait, she said. I clenched my fist on the counter, then laid down my palm. She was probably just as tired as I was. The most successful part of the system is that no one is to blame. I watched the clock. Seconds spun, minutes merged, every minute more snakes. Mindfulness, they teach you, is great for chronic snakes. So is medical attention. Why are you here? Asked the doctor finally. He looked at me through a fishbowl. I have snakes, I'm full of snakes, I said. On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad are your snakes? He asked while a blue fish circled his nose. There are 10 snakes in my hips, 13 in my spine, 4 in my ankles, 2 in each knuckle on my hands. In the morning, there are 32 snakes in my neck and 25 in each elbow. I've had snakes for 6 years, 2 months, 3 days. Your tests don't show any evidence of snakes, the doctor said through the fishbowl. Come back in 8 months. When I get home, the mail tells me my income was $8,000 last year and it was all debt. But now I can apply to go to the pool for free. I climb the stairs 1 step at a time, so I stay aerobic. The snakes are fighting with each other. I tell them to get their shit together. It's just a few more stairs. A snake bites my hip and my eyes fill with water. I breathe in to tell them there's no danger. It's just me, trying to get up steps. In group therapy, they say, love yourself, forgive yourself. I love you, I tell my snakes. They swim and coil and burn under my skin. Thank you, I say to my snakes, and I swim with them, at last, to join the whales. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thanks, Bára. So
Oh,
I'm just gonna jump in, AE. Sorry,
go for it.
I propose that that Ambica will share next, and then Sky to follow. Are you ready to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, can everybody hear me? Hi, everyone. Thank you for organizing this QWF and Argo and seeley, of course. My name is Ambica, and I am a brown person. I was born in India, raised there, and I have been here in Montreal past 10 years. I have black mid-length hair and wearing a white top with some Indian embroidery. And right now I'm at the radio station where I work, so you might probably hear some of the things going on, which is some of the calls and everything. So I apologize for that. I write poetry in my mother tongue, Hindi, and I have published some in India. But here, this is probably my first reading trying to write in English and also presenting it to you all. So I'm really looking forward to it. I do theater and I'm a dancer and I work in broadcasting. As I present these poems, I just want to tell you that my accent is Indian accent, so you will probably not understand some of the things. So let me know if it doesn't come across clearly to you. Most of my work is about nostalgia, like any other immigrant. So I'm going to present to you the first poem, one of the first that I wrote this year. It's related to pandemic, and it's also related to how women responded in terms of pandemic, and I feel that they were doing much more than the in a household, so to say. It's called The March of 2021. Of all the other years you burned at both ends, this year has been slightly more. The grind never seems to end. Working your fingers to bone, you stand tall at work and home, fast and slow, fierce or mellow. Your march is a story of hurried breath, of unsaved dogs, of puzzled hair, of skipped meals and shoddy makeup, of lost buddy moments on a cafe cheer up, of weary eyes, of work from home. Well, you managed to keep an eye on stove. The me time bartered for schoolwork. Weekends, you got a med for dad and mom. How and when you signed up for this? Still not clear. Well, I raise my toast to your spirit. Lo, behold, she's here. And yet when the dance is done, do take a bow in the spotlight that I cheer. This was the first one, and the second poem that I'm going to present this evening is about a house in India that I left behind. And this is called The House is Still Painted. The walls look dated. The house looks old. The nameplate bears your name, Dad, though deep in my heart I know. Like dull autumn sun, her memories flutter. This house is still much painted in her color. The withered house mostly stays on its own. Here, I spot your sari. Here, I spot your sari. The house asks often, where is she gone? Ah, the meticulously preserved china in cupboards, thoughtfully stacked crockery, looks bored. That seashell is the mirror from Goa beach. It gets dusty nowadays. That windshine that you put by the door. The pickle jars empty. The deserted kitchen. The house waits in patience for your laughter to return. And when he asks me to choose the paint, how do I tell him the house still waits? Hey Dad, don't bother. The house is still painted in your color. Yes, this is what I propose to read today. Seeley, do you think I still have some time, or because this is what I planned to read, 2 poems.
If you have one more short piece, do go ahead. Unfortunately, Amy won't be joining us tonight either. Go ahead, if you wish.
Okay, I have, okay, one too many poems. Okay, I will say this one, the one that I tried in Seeley's workshop, and that really is a different kind. So it's a letter to myself. That was an exercise while we were doing this workshop. Dear me, blood definitions of frayed boundaries. Searching, holding on for a while, and then get dissatisfied. Living the hurried avalanche of a life. I grow in a treasured garden of tender care. But never do I smile back at my reflection, pause a moment, or stare. Dear me, you trudge ceaselessly without a care, and yet get nearly nowhere. Dear me, you nearly get nowhere. That was a short one. That was done for the workshop. So this is it from me.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
So I think we were saying next is Sky, right?
Hmm.
All right. Take it away.
Hello. Hello. I'm just gonna go. Hi, my name is Sky. I am I'm going to start with a visual description. I am a white person wearing glasses. I have a kind of shaggy haircut, shoulder length, curly wavy hair. So it got a lot of gray in it, which I quite like, but it's also brown and auburn. I have a background that's a white curtain, looks out onto my backyard. And I'm wearing a dark colored vest that's crushed velvet, which I quite like. I am excited to be here, but also nervous. This is my first time reading anything I've written publicly. I have mostly been, my artistic practices have in the past mostly been, thank you, Seeley. We have mostly been around queer stage performance, but that's not really a possibility for me anymore. And last year I had the great privilege of meeting up with an expressive arts therapist who was doing her practicum. And she helped me open the door. So I'm reading some of the stuff that I've written today. So thanks all for listening. So the first one is Untitled. This is my body. I am animal. I smell, I eat, I cry and I shit. I feel deeply, soulfully. The grass blades that tickle my hands and slide between my toes as I shyly speak to you. The opening of my pores when I taste you with my skin. The wind sweeping through the leaves, bustling the branches. They hold a hidden message that hits my eardrums. Vibrations that remind me that all life is music in harmony. I am a nervous system, colonized, a network of buzzing and flickering neurochemicals, shaped into shocking forms, a hierarchy that scares and scars. This is the backbone of my being, the cultural pain body I grew into and still draw support from, even though it hurts us all. But this is a nervous system that can shapeshift into oceanic bliss when the scent of cedar mingles gently with my olfactory organs, when flower petals caress me, sweeping away dead skin cells and all the harmful stories they carry. When you whisper into my ear all the ways you love me because I am dirt and stardust. I am animal. I have a body that is broken, a body that cannot always be fixed. I'm immunosuppressed, chronically fatigued, with syndromes that are symptomatic of pathological lies. Social lies that I hold in each muscle twitch and tremor. Economic lies that I hold in my chipped teeth and cavities. Cultural lies that I hold in my torn ligaments and the spurs growing from my vertebrae. Ecological lies that trigger cytokine storms and tsunamis of toxins that corral around the weakest point and inflict their damage. This is my body. I am not a machine. I am an ecosystem. I am the planet. So the next one is called Hiraeth, which is a Welsh word that means a spiritual longing for home, which maybe never was, or a nostalgia for ancient places which we cannot return to. It also has another title that is Letter to the Child Who Will Stand Here in 156 Years. I see that you are a cyborg, fused with technology, a bionic eye, neural implants, nanoparticles in your immune system, gene therapy patient. You're beautiful in this meadow, reclaimed grassland, once wasteland. You tell me you feel a longing to belong. You've got codes, scanners, and chips in you. They tell you you belong somewhere, anywhere but here in this meadow where you want to belong. Sick child on a sick planet, but you're thriving and growing, adaptive and tenacious. Let me tell you a secret that's not really a secret. You already are the meadow. You always have been. Know that you are not alone. The lineage before you has felt this too. Many could not name it. You continue on the path, back to the old ways, towards the new ways. As you change, your relationships change. You are the bridge back to the land. So the next one is called My Desire is Ecological. Desire is ecological, not manufactured by billboards or algorithmic advertising, not found in the names of people I'll never meet, embossed on t-shirts and handbags. Ecological is my desire, rich and abundant, galloping over open fields of blooming wildflowers, burrowing into the earth to make a home, warming my cold blood over hot rocks in the sun. You too have a desire that's ecological, webbed, hooved, finned. An appetite that surges up from the belly, where 500 million neurons fire electrical pulses in an ancient cauldron, the brain of our ancestors. It's an appetite that lives in every cell, the desire to transform sugar into energy, a craving to care and love that unfolds every time our DNA replicates. Our genes are expressions of that desire. The oxygen that travels through our veins on the back of hemoglobin is the desire to be held by the planet, to meet the air with an outbreath of carbon dioxide and give back what we breathe in. This is the ecology of being exactly who we are. We don't even need to reclaim it. It's autonomic poetry. I have a few short ones. Am I good for time, Seeley? Okay, awesome. Thanks. So this one's called Claire Sentient. I have the urge to touch things, to know things. Like when I sink my hand into the wet soil to meet the ecosystem, or when I brush my cheek with my great-grandmother's embroidery to know my ancestors. Somewhere in that kind of touch, I melt away, and the bird songs begin to speak in a language I had forgotten, but can somehow still understand. The next one is called Calendar Cycles. I am 4 seasons in a day. Winter hibernation in the morning, springtime pollination under the noontime sun, the beautiful death of fall, endings that start with a crisp burst of color, then fade away into brown by evening. And at night, if I am able to sleep, I find summertime in my dreams. So I have one other one that I was going to share. Am I still good for time? It's a little bit longer, yeah? Okay. Last one. This is called A Garden of Ash. Pleasure can be our map. We can sculpt landscapes with our movements over the lumps and curves and nodules of our bodies. We make mountains rise from our skin with the pull of our electric gaze. Our fingers carve caverns for rivers and streams to flow, following the path of least resistance, the path of gravity. The curl of your mouth into a smile is an earthquake that splits apart the thorny sutures of my heart. What was holding my continents together can now break wide open. Let lava flow, hot, red, viscous, terraforming fluid. Let it flow into the divides, onto the rugged coastline of my broken-hearted past. Let the salty water of the ocean cool it down, steaming liquid forms, solidifying into land that we can walk on. Rich soil that's already a garden of ash, where magenta, orange, and indigo flower buds open over black earth, welcoming in new life. As if to say, this coastline can be beautiful again. As if to say, after the violent explosion, there is a soft seedbed for you to rest in. After the world is turned inside out, and all that is under pressure deep in the belly of the earth's crust comes to the surface, you will find a place to rest. As if to say, you can come back to life again. You are creator. As if to remind me, pleasure is the map, the blueprint, the paintbrush and the paint, the ecological tools to dig into the site of my deepest wound, where the most beautiful of materials await to take pleasurable form. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you for coming here and sharing with us. I feel really honored that you shared that with us as your first reading. So yay, we are so lucky.
Thanks for being so such a lovely group of people.
So I'm thinking maybe we'll do one more and then take a short break. Does that work for people? So I think next on our list was Eileen.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm so glad to be here. I haven't done a reading in a very long time, and this seems like a great place to come back to, and to share amongst like the amazing work that's already been read, and I'm sure will come after this. So I'm Eileen. I'm a white femme person with messy light brown hair and clear framed glasses. I'm wearing a blue sweater over a gray sweater because I'm in Winnipeg and it's a lot colder here. And I have a small bookshelf behind me. And I'm a writer, a PhD candidate, and occasionally a game developer who spends my time focusing on community organizing, disability justice, and environmental activism. And I'm currently working on a number of different projects, thinking about things like endometriosis awareness, transformative justice, indie games, and more. I live in Georgiaga or Montreal, but I'm currently sitting on Treaty 1 territory in the heartland of the Métis people, where the water is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. And I'm going to be reading two pieces today. The first one is heavier and more somber, and then the second is more hopeful and hopefully a remedy to the first one. It takes about 4 minutes to read the first piece, so if you want to skip it and return for the second, feel free. The content warning for the first piece, it doesn't dwell on any of these things, but it does touch on them all briefly. So a warning for grief, death, the topic of suicide, pain, medical dismissal, social media harassment, blood imagery, and dissociation. And the second piece has no content warnings. So now that I've finished my long introduction, I'll start with the body and the ghost. Being haunted isn't easy, but it's different than you'd think. More heavy and dull like a hangover, a cramp that never quite goes away. It's a familiar fatigue, the kind you grow tired of, where the world shrinks to the blade of a knife, a glimmer of a bed, and then just a wound in the sheets. A ghost of a brother, a suicide, a collection of symptoms, a fragment of light fading in and out until just a body remains. Some people leave their bodies to escape their minds. Some people's bodies take over their minds. Didn't they hear that Descartes is out of fashion? So is Freud, but the doctor says it's all in my head. I tell her about my brother's suicide so she'll stop recommending the pills that make me want to die. She tells me I can't believe everything I read on the internet. I know, I want to reply. The internet thinks I'm hysterical as well. My brother was taught how to be angry and I was taught how to be sad, to wipe up blood. The first time he left, we watched his plane until it became a fleck of dust. I haunted his bed all week, tucking myself into the sheets and inhaling his scent until it was gone. The second time he left, we packed up his belongings and I repeated the steps, the watching, the haunting, the inhalations, tears. This time, when he leaves for good, I am told to be angry, but instead I just cry, wipe up blood. We pack his belongings and I tuck myself into his bed, inhaling the scent until it's gone. Leave the haunting to him. When I Google my name, I get his face. When I look at his face, I see my own. When the world begins to shatter, I bite my tongue, and when asked to speak, blood dribbles out. My blood is not retweetable. I bleed in all the wrong ways. Is a trauma even real if it can't be hashtagged? The internet says no. But the internet is just hundreds of cables under the ocean. The internet is just millions of people full of blood. The internet is unreliable and haunted, and we depend on it. We believe all survivors while believing only some or none. We bite back so we won't be bitten. We do our best to survive each other, surviving each other. I am haunted by a procession of doctors, by a history of leeches on speculums. I am no stranger to disbelief, and neither was my brother. On the internet, they told him he deserved to die. When he does, they tell me they didn't mean it, as though I am the medium to his ghost. They tell me I used his suicide to jumpstart my career in social justice, but instead I just lost a job. My friend asks me who they are, but I don't always know. I packed my black dress before I knew he was gone because I knew he was gone. Sometimes you can know everything and nothing at all. I don't always believe in my body. I don't always know what it's saying. My feed loads in waves, the images regurgitate, and I can't stomach it. I become a ghost. A hand is on my knee reaching out to me and I am gone, vacant when I most need to be here. And maybe that is the slightest glimpse of what it is like to die, maybe just a fraction. And then the second piece. I've read about queer futurity, and I know we'll never touch utopia. I know sometimes dreaming can become self-harm, but falling for L is the closest thing to hope I've felt in years. They tell me they grew up in a lighthouse. Feels like fantasy, a folk tale. Everything I learned from Virginia Woolf taught me lighthouses cannot be reached, but there they are in front of me, windswept and real. What of queer pasts? I'm amazed at how we got here, tangled up on the bed. Our eyes are wet with tears, but for once I am not the only one in the relationship crying. I tell them it will be okay as though I am telling myself. I believe it. Within a few weeks, my house is full of their aprons and non-perishables. The cat makes a home in their backpack. They tell me I am a cloud and I open up, wrap myself around them. In the city, the storms keep building and blowing by. I want a downpour, thunder. I want to spill out on the streets. It's true, I'm in a fog, but I still keep trying to stop shipwrecks. I still keep trying to save everyone. I wake up every time I fall asleep. I dream about screaming. Whenever someone starts a sentence the wrong way, I wait for them to announce a tragedy. Elle grew up in a lighthouse. I grew up wanting to be a lighthouse keeper. I grew up wanting to be a meteorologist, to be Vanna White from Wheel of Fortune. I grew up wanting to know the secrets behind everything, the hidden vowels and storms. I grew up watching and waiting, anticipating the storms. Sometimes the present is the only place safe enough to live, but sometimes there are other lighthouses holding up the horizon. Elle trembles in my arms, and I am so glad they are in my arms. Sometimes I find myself dreaming of next week. Sometimes the future is the only way out. I let them cook for me. I let myself eat, digest. The weather app says there will be thunder tomorrow, but that could mean anything. And it is enough. It is enough. That's everything. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you so much. What a lovely note to end on before our short break. We can all let the warm, fuzzy queer feelings carry us through the break. And if you need to get some water, if you have anything else you need to do, now is the time. Let's say we'll come back at around, let's say 8:15 Eastern time, which is about 6 minutes from now. I'm not going to put a timer on, but let's aim for that. And then when we get started, our first reader will be MX. All right, as people file back in, I think Seeley, you had a couple things you wanted to say.
Yes, thanks. So, first, for folks joining tonight whom references to spoons might be a bit mysterious, as figuring marvelously in Bára's work and possibly in others as well. I just want to propose to do a basic internet search for chronic illness, spoon theory. So those words together, it will tell you anything you would want to know about how spoons have become kind of a meaningful concept to a lot of us in community. Chronic illness, spoon theory. Also, I just wanted to briefly comment on why the practice of providing visual descriptions. Well, it respects the probability of people participating in the event who are blind or low vision, or possibly have sensory reception issues such that getting some verbal descriptions are assistive. Not unlike the practice of declaring one's pronouns in order to make space for variation in gender identification and pronouns in a shared space. So thank you. And when we get to our Q&A time at the end, any of you are invited to jump in with questions. And if you go on camera, if you could provide a brief little visual of yourself too, that would be great. So I am gonna make one other note right now, and I think I'll return to it a little bit when I go toward the end of this, which is that in Montreal, also known as Jojage, one of too many police fatalities a few years back was the shooting of Nicholas Gibbs in this month, August 2018 in NBG. I'm mentioning this because one of our intended readers tonight, Dexter X, had to suddenly withdraw because of a direct request to support Gibbs's surviving family and loved ones and organizing an anniversary event for the situation of his really untimely loss. And so Dexter was not able to join for the reading tonight. I will share some further info about the where one can get details about the event that Dexter will be organizing as best I can. And for now, I'm grateful for everyone who is able to be here with us tonight. And I'd like to welcome Alex to share.
Thank you, Seeley. Thank you, everyone. Hi, my name is Marin. I have no webcam or profile picture. Nonetheless, I am a half-blind person wearing an oversized cotton t-shirt for comfort. My body is autoimmune. That means I must learn how it responds to the world it traverses. I am not a marble statue. I am sick of the metal leeches which have taken 100 measures of blood and declared it pathological. I used to trust doctoring the way a child trusts well-meaning adults. It's taken 20 years to learn that I know my body better than they do. Today, I'm sharing fragments written over the course of this summer. Content warning for brief mentions of death, sex, and blood. May 10th. I left home to the tune of Daydream Nation. She said, I wanted to map the exact dimensions of hell. Does this sound simple? May 12th. We're all gonna die, we're all gonna die, we're all gonna die. Quick, take cover, get away from the acid rain. In a military issue hammock nearby, khaki, green, strung between a clothesline post and a young cedar tree. I'm taking in the sunshine of high spring in the valley below Montcommis in the Bas Saint-Laurent. The deathly cackle nearby is the sound of children at play on an old school trampoline, no safety netting. They're huddled, yes, under blankets, unzipped sleeping bags, a fortress of their own design. Limbs mustn't trespass the protection of the game. They all have enough to drink. It arrives in the home via tap and consigned plastic jugs. From the pipes, it sits in glass pitchers on the bar to let some chlorine evaporate with no concern for heavy metals or pathogens. Most mornings, they breakfast, eating any of the following depending on their mood. Supermarket multigrain toast with butter, white sugar cereal with milk, cow's yogurt, fruit, or ramen noodles. The eldest sometimes fasts by choice. May 14th. Dreamt of a matriarch's confession. She said, I do not understand the world. I made wrong decisions for posterity. I have nothing for my kin. The youth gather around her, petty, jealous, all thoughts on inheritance. May 16th. Sat on a couch that each night serves as a bed, eyes alternating between love in the time of cholera and the Gospel of Luke. I finish neither text. Thomas sits next to me, reading L'Agent Jean, a Quebecois comic book for kids, depicting the adventures of a super genius secret agent anthropomorphic moose named Jean, and his wacky shenanigans saving the world from absurd threats. Thomas and his brother Isaac are armed with waffle cones full of homemade food processor ice cream. They love L'Agent Jean. The drawings are high-impact color fever dreams, volumes signed by Alex A. It's a sci-fi multiverse populated with technicolor mammals and reptilians with a variety of cybernetic cyborgisms. Thomas comes to see me later at the dining table, asks me if I want to learn more about Jean and the good guys of the agency. Henry is a nerdy lizard who's won 4 Nobel Prizes but ne parle pas anglais. It's an archetypal story. Bond made sillier still. Easy to believe that this is the most fun reading around. The kids have a book compiling all the characters and their metadata, but it's wrong. Colère first appeared in tome 1, not tome 4. Whiplash as we transition to playing tic-tac-toe. Isaac demonstrates expertise in rigging the board, going first, but I ask them, how inane is an unlosable game? May 18th. It's evening. I am alone here. My host has gone to counsel a suicidal friend. No one else with me except, I realize, the cat. I went out to the fire pit and burned a letter, watched the embers go out. Back in the house, I sit next to her, get to scratching, petting, a low purr, and she moves into a better position for her. Pads softly around me. I turn at the spine to follow. Skull, neck, thorax, haunches. My hand runs over smoky fur. She bends in, contorting to reach her sex with tongue, and licks herself avidly. A small body beats and shudders until she suddenly stops, looks around. The moment has passed. I was merely some help, a privileged witness. June 15th. Those movements of rivers overflowing are the same as veins leaking. A whisper in the poplar trees I was tasked with trimming. Saw off live branches, peel off the bark. Notice inside the artery bleeds red, sickly sweet within white wood. There will be no cure. I am healing myself. I shed all regrets for every day in this life that the sun rises and sets. Nights spent in a tent to wake up under the fury of Mars. Ursa Major illuminating the barley field. A harvest moon so bright I cast a shadow, treading carefully so as not to trip, seeking a key, the key that was stolen at birth. So easy to get lost. Thank you.
Very nice. Yes, fragments of hypnotism. True. Okay. Madelaine, are you up for next?
Yeah, that sounds great. Can everyone hear me? Great. So I am a white person with short brown hair. I'm wearing a leopard print dress and a blue necklace. And I'm in a room with a bookshelf and a white wall and a teal wall. The poems that I'm going to be reading discuss my experiences of obsessive compulsive disorder and autoimmune disease. To me, these experiences have many things in common, and that they're both defined by a self that doesn't recognize itself and which fears that self to the point where self-protection and self-destruction become difficult to distinguish. Part of me is inclined to see this as a message or as a metaphor for how, as a queer person and a neurodiverse person, and even as a woman, there's so many ways I've been conditioned to suppress and to fear myself, to lose that ability to recognize my own thoughts and even my own body. At the same time, illness or disability can't be reduced to a moral or a metaphor. There's no one reason why it happens or who it happens to, no right way to reconcile how we should live the lives we've been given. What I will say is that I've come to realize ambivalence is not indifference. When I first developed this autoimmune disease, I initially understood it as my body having given up after being tired of fighting to exist for so long. But autoimmunity isn't a giving up, it's a body fighting and trying, however misguidedly, to protect itself. Even when I was fighting myself, I was fighting to live. And that is something that I would like to honor. This poem is called Dermatillomania, so trigger warning for skin picking disorder. The hands are a question, a circuit that loops back, pleading or prayer, to know stillness as a no, to know stillness as an itch, the body a hard break, and then healing can begin. No, I know, there's an itch. How do you get outside yourself? How do you stay in? There is cleaning the breakage, which is a new breakage. There is a sequence I run my nail up and down over a sequence I can't complete or break through. The absence of boundaries is itself a boundary in that it is saying, no, I know. I know my hands as an itch, my body a sequence I can't complete. Every impulse is touch, inquire, repeat, 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 repeat. This poem is called Alexithymia, which is a clinical word for the inability to put names to emotions. Trigger warning that this piece discusses autoimmune disease and self-injury. 1. Lexis, speech. Thumos, soul, spirit, bond to blood and breath, the sight of feeling, reaction, desire to be recognized. A negation. 1. To exist requires immense energy. Do you permit yourself to exist? It's not a yes or no question. There has to be how. The body is not detachable, but it is easier to say the body, to make it not self, sever muscle from memory. Membranes keep out most of the world, absorb what remains. What cannot be excreted is shaped into tissue or history. Ulcers in the intestinal wall, shoulders that shirk from touch. Notice I do not say my shoulders. In the morning, trees of red light sink into my eyelids. Burrs of thought gather, and I become. 1. First friend, I love you, and we are so tired. Your smell of sweat and cinnamon, threadbare softness of your coat, and posture woven against the wind. The snow blows one way, black sky another. I glow like a pharmacy trying to tell you. The years expand between us. Factory work soaks your clothes, stitches stones to your gestures when your hands try to talk. Eyes quieted, we fill our mouths with dollar store chocolate, pour smoke through our lips across unbroken snow. Clouds spill out of us, sink out of sight in the glass black sky. Call it a soul, this hollow glow, throwing back the Christmas lights. 1. At 18, I developed an autoimmune disease, though I say an autoimmune disorder, a word that sounds cleaner, less permanent, something misplaced rather than lost. My body ceased to recognize itself. White blood cells target intestinal tissue, mistaking myself for intruder. I sharpened my bones on absence, cut out oranges, meat, oil, spices. Polite conversation prefers membranes intact, insides internal. Does it hurt? Asks the doctor, moving his hands over different parts of my abdomen. I don't know how to answer. 1. The inability to express anger may be read as contentment. The self forms in, around, a negation. In high school, we said we didn't care about politics, rolled our tights over knife fights. At 14, I kept a rock beside my bed to smash against my arms. I don't know why, except that it felt right, or maybe felt wrong in that good way, that is, less wrong than doing nothing. 1. At 14, I crumpled amongst junior high toilets, writing fuck on the walls. Hardly original, yet a poem in its pressure. 1. Can I call this anger? Braid its hot metal into a will. Crackle a match against eye's black candle, split down my matter for light to read by. I forget what is me in this metaphor. Vision, wick, vanishing point. 1. I read that certain illnesses may be the body's way of insisting on care, that pain is a survival mechanism, a way for the body to speak. Are you there? 1. I am trying to make you love or believe me. I am trying to live in a body. 1. I collapse into the back of a taxi, laughing and crying quietly so as not to disturb the driver. I ask my roommate to hide the meds when we get home. She promises, and then I'm in the living room saying this isn't really happening. I'm acting, asking for attention, and I'm sorry. She brings glasses of water, their surfaces trembling, says, who cares if you want attention? Everyone wants attention. It's part of being a person. 1. Is there a difference between a personality and an imitation of a personality? I want to be honest, but I see the wires. There's no polite word for unbound hunger, so I leave that out, the motivation. Polish the absence into something academic, malleable, a sculpture of potential, how it collapses, how it shines. When I meet another person like me, the air between us thins and quiets, two mirrors reflecting an infinity of possible selves until someone moves. And I will close with one last poem. This one is called Insomnia. Thoughts cannot hurt you. When flies settle on the ceiling, do not listen to the fever of their wings. Honesty does not have to be a knife. When you check your reflection, use the window. A sheet of glass and silver won't show you as you are. Look to stars and smog, swaying hands of trees, traffic burning green against the night. The age of the sky above shell gray streets. Trace the shape of your hand to remember you are not a bird. Your bones are not empty. When the beat of carbon and marrow moves in your limbs, listen. Walk yourself loose from steel bands of a fracture. You can't seem to hold your ribs closed, but your chest does not break. The air is not the color of a migraine. Smudge the list off the back of your hand, the bruised ink of unfinished tasks. Birds are not calling out your failure. They are calling each other home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madelaine.
Thank you, Madelaine. I really enjoyed those.
Thank you.
Beautiful stuff.
Excellent.
I think we have two more readers for this evening. And the next one is Pamela.
We need your mic on.
Sorry, I forgot. So I'm Pamela. I'm a young white woman with long brown hair and brown eyes, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt, and my background is a pink wall. So I'm currently a student at Concordia University pursuing a BA in creative writing. I have cerebral palsy, and my work often explores disability and the body. I love to write both poetry and prose, and I'm going to be reading both a poem today and an excerpt of a prose fiction piece. So, poem. Preferable to nothing. I prefer trembling hands and spastic movements to a stillness only achievable by stress. White knuckle hold on armrest. I prefer stilted sentences, uneven vocals, quivering breaths, and even a facial expression that maybe looks quite silly over stone-faced, tight-lipped nothing. The latter paints me gray, an overcast sky, muted and matte, silence rendering me invisible, causing regret to spread through every inch of my body like oil spills into ocean. Skin sweats salt water. I shiver as a single drop drips under the fabric of my shirt, a rivulet approaching my belly. The ship's anchor follows, sinking. With the former, I am an overgrown yard, weeds abound. At first glance, I may look inelegant, sprawling flora for my spastic motions, but if I sweat, it's from activity, and the sun warm on my skin. Both say, you are alive, and the words that come between shaking breaths tell others that my mind is too. Sky no longer gray, the sun's glow inspires growth and amplifies the vibrancy of every hue. The yellow bursts of dandelions, electric magenta of pink sorrels, violet blue shock of creeping charlies, and energetic orange of butterfly milkweeds. And if one stops to consider the delicateness of the plant's petals or the intricacy of their design, they might actually find this mess of movement and color and greenery to be quite beautiful, because weeds are often extremely similar to flowers, just more difficult to control. And here's the beginning of a short story I wrote. I wish that we could stay like this forever, half asleep, eyes still closed, my face nuzzled into the crook of his shoulder, hand on his warm chest, our legs entangled under plush comforter. Then I feel the duvet move as he begins to lift it from his torso. 5 more minutes, I murmur. We said that 10 minutes ago. He replies with a soft laugh and a smile against his neck. I know, but I'll miss you too much, I say, peppering kisses on his skin and the corner of his mouth lips. I'll miss you more. I gotta get ready for work though. Okay, I concede, rolling my eyes in feigned annoyance. He opens the blinds. Bleary-eyed, I watch as the sunlight cascades over his torso. Dust motes whirl around him. Like magic, I think. My eyes close again. Then they open wide, and my knees jump to my chest at the clang of metal against metal, the sound of him opening up my walker. Sorry, he says softly. I was trying to do it quietly. It's okay, I say through a breathy laugh and hand on my heart, trying to relax its sprinting. The walker is made up of hollow steel rods welded and screwed together. It's shut by lifting 2 of those rods apart from each other, opening by bringing them together again. And I know from years of being startled at the sound, hearing people yelp at caught fingers, and accidentally waking up family members late in the night, that it's incredibly difficult to control the pace at which the two metal bars meet. That, and my cerebral palsy, the reason I need the walker, gives me a heightened startle reflex. Any loud or sudden noise, so much as someone saying my name when I'm not expecting it, will make my knees jump up, my hands lift from a tabletop, or at the very least, my eyes to rapidly blink. So, in every way, I'm used to it. He pushes the walker near the side of the bed so I can get up when I'm ready. Then he checks his phone, stretches his arms above his head, and says, I gotta leave in like 30 minutes. Oh my God, already? You should have gotten up earlier, I say. Nah, don't worry about it. You look so calm, and I knew you'd stress out if I told you the time. He's right. I take a deep breath and exhale the panic that's risen in my chest. So I guess I'll just go take a super quick shower, and then I'll make some coffee and breakfast. All right, I say, and he goes across the hall to the washroom. As I hear the water run, I muster up the energy to stretch my limbs as far as they will go, from fingertip to toe. I stare at the ceiling for a bit, make it a canvas for my thoughts. I think of last night, laying in each other's arms on the couch, then him carrying me up to bed. It feels like the type of thing that only happens in romantic comedies, and the memory gives me so much joy, my stomach does backflips. Then I think of what today will bring, and nerves fill me. I'm not used to staying home alone, not for more than a few hours. I'm 27, but I still live with my parents, and given that Daniel doesn't work on Saturdays and Sundays, I'm only able to spend weekends at his place. Last night, though, on a weeknight, we decided to see each other, and I didn't feel like leaving. So I decided to stay the night, and it was perfect. But now, it feels as if there's a trial of whether I will be able to get through the day without help.
Thank you so much, Pamela.
Thank you. Okay, I think there is one reader left, and that's you, Seeley. And after which, I think we will have a maybe very short Q&A session because we're already creeping up on that 2-hour mark. But we'll probably have time for a few questions, so you can start thinking about those after Seeley's performance.
Okay, so, all right, again, I'm Seeley Quest. I use the pronouns she and here. I am joining from land traditionally known as Jojage, also as Munyan. And I did want to first just say something further briefly regarding Dexter having to step out of the reading event tonight. I am not on social media, however, many of you are, and I really encourage everyone to check the local channels in the city for an event announced for this coming Saturday in a couple days. That would be observing the anniversary of the loss of Nicholas Gibbs, and to just say a bit briefly about some significance here. He was a 23-year-old Black man killed in NDG neighborhood in front of his mother's apartment, shot to death by police after the police had been called to a scene where he was agitated and apparently threatened them with a knife. However, is that a situation where anyone needs to be shot to death? There are statistics of the amount of racialized, especially Black and Brown, deaf, mentally ill, and neurodivergent people who, because of either not hearing police intercessions in a way that hearing folks do, or because of essentially altered cognitive states, get I don't have a statistic off the tip of my tongue, but I can say it's at this point is accounting for, in fact, the great majority of police killings of especially Black and Brown people. And people who aren't racialized, but who are disabled in these ways are also statistically higher at risk of being killed. So this is work that many peers have reflected on in great depth and more eloquently than me. And I really ask everyone to check out the movements against police violence and take note of the intersections against ableist violence, and to show up for the folks in your communities whose lives are at great precarity because of these intersections. And also in this vein, I want to briefly share a short poem that's a much older one of mine, from 2003, but I did a little writing once upon a time that reflected on some of these things. So this is a short piece called Lucky. To be raised among theater queens and have learned I can protect myself with saying, it's okay, because I'm just a performer. I'm not really threatening you. Lucky that my education usually helps me talk my way out of getting hauled off by an authority after disturbing the peace with agitation. And my whiteness helps get me hauled off first instead of shot. Lucky I wasn't a Gentile Crip in Poland in the Holocaust. I've seen the exhibit room of braces and crutches at Auschwitz. Though I could mask my queerness or craziness a while, they'd soon enough see my back twist out and I'd be gone. Lucky to not be electroshocked for a therapeutic experiment like some friends with scoliosis, because they already dissociate from and hate my body enough. Lucky I haven't walked into the wrong men's room yet. I'm lucky for so many other reasons, and to have things that inspire me and people to fight for. And I will just end with a bit longer poem in a rather different tone. Sorry, I realized I wasn't really warning of possible triggers there. Here we are. So as some others tonight have spoken to the presence of jouissance in our lives, I do feel this is important. So this is perhaps an ode called He Has Short Arms. You know, the kind you get if your parent was exposed to certain drugs or other factors that mutate development. He has short arms, but regularly wields his razor to keep a close shave because it seems easier to introduce himself with a European kiss on the cheek than a handshake. I can tell he likes his jawline to stay as kempt and smooth as possible because he's got a lot of people to meet and kiss and charm. He's also game to charm by feeding people chocolate, being fed chocolate, and by licking chocolate off others too. He shares this after a girl says, I just fed her from my piece of chocolate torte. He adds yes. He wants some also. And then I get his mouth deliberately closed around my two fingers to caress the bite from them with his tongue, an approach I hardly get every day. He thanks me and moves off in the crowd, while I marvel at how supple his lips feel. He has short arms, and perhaps his legs wouldn't seem so long otherwise. With his height and peculiar grace, there's a beautiful long movement as he suddenly steps down next to me upon returning and saying, yes, he'd like more, but thinks he needs to be kneeling for it. I can tell he's not all about chisel bravado. When this time he lets me play with him at my pace, lets me first brush against the surprising softness of the skin around the lower edges of his face, asking, how badly do you want it? Before finally pushing the smear past his teeth. He worships the texture of my fingertips as much as the tort, savors sucking them even more thoroughly now, and after he rises and disappears again, I wonder if he likes his fingers licked as much as I do. Are his upper appendages sensitive differently from his lower ones? They are placed perfectly to stroke his own chest or another's. He barely has to stretch one arm to mouth his fingertip wet and then circle that pleasure upon his nipple. Economy of size yields economy of movement. I like the languidness of his hands reaching above his shoulders and returning to tickle at rib level where they belong. He has short arms, which fit just right when I imagine him folding at the waist and knees to place his head at my leg's juncture. I can tell how sweetly his hands frame his face, how suited they are to press apart thighs, how neither of us would be distracted by an excess of gangly limbs from the focus of his elbows angled precisely in to pull hidden skin taut for discovery. He has short arms, so he's trained his full lips to do some things in their stead, like grasp the cap of a thing that needs a screwing motion to open it up. He need apply no wrist when he can just circle it with his mouth's hold until it comes completely undone. He's also accomplished with his feet. He uses one to wash his ass. Upon learning this, first I think, what else can he do with his feet? Next I think, what else does he do with his ass? I think of when he first knelt to me, how I said, you know, I'm also a pro dom. And now instead of, why am I not surprised? What if he said, you think I'm surprised? And then I could have shown restraint by simply saying, cheeky, while lightly scratching my nails across the side of his face before letting him suck them inside. I can tell if I managed to draw him off from the crowd to dally somewhere less public, when he leaned by a wall, I could pin his arms at the shoulders to hold him there. Though he quite outsizes me, what if he welcomed my play, pressing a moment to show my want? He has short arms, which remind me of my one high school mate with not much dangling for his, the one who was my English teacher's son and therefore felt off limits, but who was beautiful and the most streamlined runner on the track team, someone I saw cutting through air for hours. Queer lovers of mine with straight spines have said they love my back's asymmetry, its sinuous twisting, and I can tell he knows how it feels to be a freak in one's bones the way others don't. Little's off limits now. I hardly want to wash my fingers that held his chocolate, knowing that later I'll roam more of my body with them. I can tell he knows it too, as upon parting for the night, hugging me close with short arms. His last murmured words are, when you get off, think of me. So hooray for
Hooray.
all the audiences, all the readers, and maybe for the rain starting right now, finally. Whew.
Yep, I just started hearing it too.
Heading next level. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So let's take, I don't know, 15 minutes for a Q&A. If people need to leave because they were planning for it to go until 9, that's totally fine. I totally understand. If people do want to stick around for a little bit of conversation, I think we're good for a little bit longer, but we won't go too long because it's a late night. So
I would like to invite, if anyone has a burning question, now is a chance to make an inquiry. And if not, I would be happy to toss one out, but.
And I'm going to add that you can add your question into the chat if you don't feel like turning on your camera or your mic and speaking out. You can definitely put your question in the chat and then we'll read it out for you.
We're pausing.
Maybe Seeley, if you want to start things off. I mean, what's coming in through the chat is lots of love and appreciation, which I definitely echo. But if you do still want to go ahead with that Q&A, even though things are getting quite quiet at this point, Seeley, you want to get things started, and we can just kind of do a turn around the table with the question that you had prepared, and then call it a night.
Yep. This is semi-spontaneous, but I'm gonna ask if if each of the folks who are up for it, who read tonight, might comment briefly on something that is motivating you the most in your writing today.
That's a great question. So what is motivating you the most in your writing right now? I don't know if we need to go in any particular order. I think if any of the readers wants to chime in, they can go ahead. There is a hand raising mechanism in Zoom, so maybe you can do your little hand raising react. It's under reactions. There's a big button that says raise hand, and maybe that's how we can mark the order of responses.
I'm going to executively nominate Madelaine to speak first on this.
Sure. Well, I find that I need to write, or at least do something where I'm making something that is outside myself, and that I can observe and have this visual record of it in order to feel some sense of solidity and some record that what is going on inside me is not totally detached from the rest of the world, and just having some way to bring what is outside and what is inside into conversation and into relation. I find it's extremely healing and grounding in a way that I need. It's a way to recognize that I do, in fact, have an inner life, and that that's something worth protecting and defending, and worth also trying to connect with other people and make something joyful out of this experience of being in the world. So I've been trying to hold on to that, and I think in times of isolation, it can be especially important to have that, and to recognize that there is a world out there that I exist in relation to, and it's not all arbitrary, internally contained, but a process of relation and coming into contact, and that something meaningful can come out of that and out of expressing oneself.
Here. Eileen, did you want to toss in?
Eileen is smiling like there's something you want to add.
I was smiling in fear. No, I don't know. The first word that came to mind was like repair, trying to repair things, but I don't actually know what the things are necessarily. Maybe that's part of the process, is figuring it out. And then also just trying to take back like the stories that have been taken away from me, and figure out how to reclaim those. And I think writing can just be even a process of working through that and figuring out whether it even needs to happen. So that's where I've been at recently.
Indeed. Thank you.
I can go next. I think for me, writing has turned into a process of self-documentation. Not that writing is inherently a process of documentation, that's a given, but I mean that rather than writing in order to share, I've transitioned to writing for myself. There's a quote that I came across in study earlier this summer that goes, "Defense is a series of very definite mechanisms." So defense is not a metaphor. It's not something abstract. It's something that we can understand, something that I have the potential to understand. And so documenting over time the things I come across is a way to understand autoimmunity or self-defense.
Ready for that. Ambica, did you want to share next?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that for me, it's been something that I did very late in my life. Mostly it came to, I think, process and to understand, as some of us said before, whatever happened to us in the earlier years, to understand for me and to process, and then probably to heal. Yes, it was very personal in the beginning, but as I can see now, and some of us, as Madelaine said, it keeps going from the outer world to also the inner one that exists, and sometimes it beautifully merges the two more and more. Yeah, that's, and I'm still in a process of exploring.
If we're continuing. Sky, did you want to add words?
Yeah, for me, what was already sort of said about writing for myself feels really resonates with me. And I think something that I'm just trying to find in my life, and I guess as well as in writing, is like following like pleasure and joy and beauty, like really actively seeking it out and feeling it as much as possible, as a way to sort of reclaim that from all the sort of suffering that illness can bring, you know? And I think that through that pleasure, it's there's liberation. And I think that it's like you're like doing it for the pure sake of doing it. Yeah, you know, it's liberating myself from the sense of having to write for someone else or for a specific purpose, but really just because it feels good. And that in itself is enough, you know? And I think that yeah, I just want to do more things because they feel good. You know? So that's it. Yeah.
Snaps to that. Yeah, I just to, like, I'll share a couple words on this too, but if Pamela or Bára, you wanted to as well, please do. Anything that you feel is especially motivating you, or that's in response to others' comments.
And if you would rather not, that's also totally fine.
Yes.
The opening is there for you.
We are open to verbal and non-verbal presences.
So why don't you take us home, Seeley? Why don't you you wrap up here?
For sure. I feel like the archive is important. I really, and it's about, I feel motivated regarding taking, like, lending my own writing attempts to those of the really vast web of disabled and sick and mad, etc., ancestors and the ones to come, you know, like we're really, yeah, I feel motivated both to kind of help highlight realities that some that are underrepresented and that a lot of folks don't have that much chance to have their own notes made. And so I'm trying to figure out how to both add, you know, what fits from me and how to have my work be but a piece of the really larger fabric, and how to kind of respect like where it fits amongst so many other really excellent creative world movers. So happy for everyone who's been joining this tonight.
Thank you so much, Seeley. I think that really encapsulates so much of what's been said, and I am thrilled that this event could have been part of that archive in a way. And I was blown away by everybody's readings and everybody's talent, and I'm so thrilled that we were able to put this event together. And I'm so grateful to all of you who came and shared your stories and your poems and your life experience. I want to also thank the QWF one more time, who both hosted the workshop that all this sprung out of, and also for co-hosting tonight's event. And to remind everyone that video of this event will be available on the QWF YouTube channel before too long. So maybe when that video is available, I'll try to see if the Argo can tweet about it or something. We'll try to get the word out. And the QWF does all kinds of great events. I got a message just earlier today about one on Tuesday, August 17th, so really soon. They're doing an event at 6 p.m. called Writers Out Loud, and specifically the Pride edition of that. So I have a link I will put in the chat, and there might be some interest among attendees here. So keep an eye on what they're doing, keep an eye on what we're doing. We have events pretty much every week. Next week, we have a book launch for Kathleen Winter's new novel, Undersong, which should be amazing. You can find all of our stuff on our website, our Twitter. If you came here via Eventbrite, if there's an Eventbrite page, and all our events are posted there too. So you'll be able to find us in lots of ways, or you can just email events@argobookshop.ca if you have any questions. And on that note, I think I'm going to wrap things up here for the evening with a final thank you to Seeley for making this happen. And hoping that everybody has a good end of the week and finds a way to keep cool and enjoy the soothing rain if it finally comes.
Yes, I'm hoping more to come also. There's obviously plenty of writers and audience in Quebec. So may the disability series continue, and thank you all so much.
Night, everyone.